guys, welcome to another exciting episode of Pete versus Anxiety. Today, my guest is Liz. Liz, why don't you say hello to everybody?
Hi, everyone.
Liz, where are you calling in from today?
I'm in Edinburgh, Scotland.
Oh, see, I noticed that a little bit. I was like, I couldn't figure out where you were exactly, but that sounds awesome. Liz is actually sorry, pull my notes here. I'm a little off key, and now we're back on track. She has dealt with severe anxiety in 2006 and has made her way all the way up to a somatic therapeutic trauma-informed coach. Sorry.
Yes.
So, Liz, why don't you tell the people a little bit about yourself?
So I became a therapist because I suffered from anxiety. I was diagnosed with severe anxiety in 2006, and I found the help available to be quite not very up to much, to be honest. And it took me on a path to learning everything I could about anxiety and how we can help it, which resulted in me qualifying as a therapist. And I've continued to study, and also now I'm a somatic trauma-informed coach. So, yes.
So, what exactly is a trauma coach? I'm sorry, somatic trauma coach.
A somatic trauma-informed coach is, with somatic things, we are incorporating the body as well as the mind when we're dealing with trauma or anxiety, because our nervous system is actually at the core of who we are, and it has such an effect on anxiety and how we cope. We really have to understand the nervous system. And we need somatic practices to bring us back to our body so that we can actually release trauma and anxiety from our system entirely.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. That's pretty cool because I deal with anxiety myself right now, and a lot of that stuff, it's kind of similar to that too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's pretty cool though, because I seen that. I was looking at it, it's like, man, that's really interesting to see. So is that something you've always wanted to do, or is it because your anxiety that led you that way?
A bit of both, to be honest. I mean, the thing about anxiety is it's not the same for everyone. We all have it to a different degree. And usually, there's so many causes from it. Anxiety can be your hormones are out of balance. They can be your mindset. It can be unprocessed emotions. It can be your nervous system is, stuck in a trauma response. And everyone's a combination of all of those things. So recognizing that, because for myself, it was my childhood that caused my anxiety. And it was the dysfunctional behaviors that I had from my childhood, that I'd learned from family, that caused me to basically get overloaded and start suffering it quite drastically. And 100%, as clients have came to me over the years for therapy, it's never the same thing twice. We all have a different range of reasons for it. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. Honestly, you're right. Anxiety does have people experience it in different ways versus, a lot of people thinking it's a cookie cutter kind of one form only thing, and stuff like that. So yeah, I agree with that. And a lot of times, as we discussed in your questionnaires, people don't talk about mental health enough. And that's the problem. That's the whole reason this whole great thing with this podcast was, and this is why I started this whole thing, was just to, inform people that there's different people out there's different ways and different ways anxiety affects people versus people thinking it's just, it's all the same thing. That's this. No, it's not, guys. There's different things about this stuff. And Liz would be the first one to tell you it's not how that works.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right.
And we're still quite behind in society, I think, because I think the vast majority of advice is to try and get us to a positive kind of way of being. But actually, I've found it much more effective for myself and for clients to actually work on the darker side of it, working with the unprocessed stuff, working to build our resilience, working to actually realize our capacity so that we can handle the negativity in life rather than just trying to push into positivity all the time.
Yeah, and that's true. A lot of people don't want to face the reality, or a lot of them can't handle facing the fears of, a lot of things. And I had a conversation with somebody on a podcast I was on the other day, and me and her were discussing how we feel like some of today's generations what they call soft. You know, they can't handle the realism of things like a lot of us did when we grew up. And say like a lot of us refer to the 90s because I'm a 90s baby. I was born in
Yeah.
85, so I lived through that whole scenario. Like, all the stuff that we did then versus now, it's just so much different.
Yeah, absolutely.
You
I'm a
know, they,
90s baby, yeah, so I know that well.
and it's like they sensitize everything now. And it's like, well, what are we doing now? Why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? And it's
Exactly.
fun. And it's funny because we were talking about like, kids getting bullied and things like that, and how the fact now the internet gives them more access for people to deal with that kind of stuff, and it's just crazy.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely,
You know
absolutely.
what I mean?
Yeah, and the
And
focus does tend to be on that rather than what we can do about it. And we have to kind of push that wee bit further. I think that's definitely what made the difference to me.
yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I got bullied myself in school. So, a lot of times it's like I know how a lot of people feel when it comes to that kind of stuff, and,
Yeah,
the mental aspects of things you deal with every day. Like, oh, am I going to get picked on today, or is it going to be tomorrow? And, and it doesn't help that, your anxiety feeds all that too. And then, I have depression as well. So, that doesn't help,
yeah, 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 totally. Yeah.
and other factors, that count into that kind of thing, and stuff like that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we have to take into account all of those, because this is the thing. I wish people would see themselves more as, rather than being wrong or broken, they could see themselves as, I have been influenced in many different ways. And those influences can have a lasting effect. You know,
Exactly.
if we saw ourselves as being influenced, then we could take it as being something we can do something about rather than a core issue within ourselves.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree with you on that one. But like I said, that's the nice thing about this whole idea, this podcast. Why I even started is so we can talk about these kinds of things. People can
Yeah,
come here, have a safe space. They can interact, with you, and ask you guys questions, and different people, that are more experts in that area that can help them better understand things.
yeah,
Because a lot of people are afraid to get help these days because they feel like, oh, well, that makes me crazy, is what the number one response I got from people I surveyed. And it's just crazy. It really is, because you're not crazy if you want somebody to help you understand how your thought process is working to better live your life versus living in fear every day.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And society isn't set up to be supportive of that.
Oh God, no.
Society is very judgmental and they're very, uh, unfortunately, societies fall to their lowest standards. And of course, when we talk about stigma a lot in mental health, we need to turn our attention away from the stigma. If someone has a stigma towards mental health, they are emotionally immature. They're not considering the experience of other people. We need to actually ignore the stigma and come to the focus on, well, what do you need? What do you need here?
Exactly. And people such as Liz can help you figure out those things. Like maybe you need some other kind of, attention wise stuff, and different things that'll help you versus other people, because therapy is not just one thing only for anybody, guys. Like I went through 3 therapists to get to the one I'm at now. It's like, don't give up. Like not
No,
everybody's styles, like, Liz may not fit your cookie. And then my guest, I had on a prior episode, Corey, she may not fit yours. You know what I mean? That's the great thing about
precisely.
it.
Yeah, but never give up because there is solutions. I do anxiety working with through 4 different areas. First you have your mindset. What are you telling yourself? What is your mind telling you? Then we have the emotional range. We have to develop emotional intelligence. We have to be able to process our emotions and have all of them running through our system, which society is actually terrible at doing. If we've ever been with people who are like, stop crying, why are you crying? You're making me sad. They're making our emotions wrong, and that actually becomes problematic. But we then have the physical aspect to that, which is your nervous system. What state is your nervous system in? How can we regulate that? What do you need to regulate that? That's when we're talking about safe spaces and people that we can talk to and things like that, but also somatic practices which can undo any trauma responses in your system. But then we have I call it the resonance, which is how have you been taught to see the world? What have you been taught to expect from the world? And do we need to update that, so that, because if we've been brought up with people who have dysregulated nervous systems, they are going to teach us to have a view of the world that the world's quite scary. Do we need to do work on that where you can open up your mindset? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's so many different layers to it that it can be, if you go to someone that only does mindset and they don't consider your emotions, you may feel a part of you's been left behind. If you go to someone who only does emotional work, you may feel that your nervous system is still out of kilter. So we end up with this end result where people think, well, I've tried therapy and it didn't help. Well, it probably wasn't perfect for you though. We need to learn to really delve into where exactly we are, like what's your specific starting point, and let's work from there. That's the only way that we're going to see good results from it.
Yeah, exactly. So like given my situation, I know like I have sometimes I get issues where I get very upset easily, but
Mhm.
from what I'm understanding now is that when I had an incident when I was about 13, my mom abandoned me on my dad's doorstep.
Yeah,
So like, it's it's somewhere in there is a root of part of the problem of why I get so angry about like the stupidest things possible. And my wife, luckily, has not left me to this day because she understands that I've gone through a lot. And guys, it's hard when you don't have somebody that understands exactly how you're feeling, and you don't have somebody supportive and things like that. It's tough because you feel like you're all alone, and like no one understands what the problem is. And then it's like, oh, it's you against the world, when it shouldn't really be like that.
yeah. And I mean, that's going to leave an influence on you where, you know, your system is going to be, that is somebody that was supposed to be there for me, regardless of anything. And she rejected me, she abandoned me. Therefore, and the brain does some kind of, universal maths where it's like, I obviously deserve to be abandoned in some way. And it becomes a fundamental belief that isn't true, but your body makes that, it creates that expectation from that experience.
Yeah. And then, in my situation, guys, with my anxiety, like it'll start inventing things that don't even happen.
Yeah,
Like I start forecasting in my mind that, a scenario that is not even close to happening is happening. And, like I said, luckily my wife is very supportive and understands the situation is that when it starts happening, she knows like how to identify things. She'll like, if something gets a little too close to that, she'll stop it immediately and go, yeah, no, we're not talking about that, because it's going to cause an issue. It's going to cause his brain to start thinking in a certain way and stuff like that. And that's the great thing I lucked out with when I got married to her, that she knows a lot more about a lot of this stuff too, because she deals with her own issues. She has like CPTSD and stuff like that. So she's been doing a bunch of that stuff, and it's great, and then I also have a support system, which I was telling people on my last episode I did, that that's great to have too, people you can call if you have a problem and things like that.
absolutely. Yes.
So, and it's like, most people don't know when to go get help and things like that. So is there like anything that they should, kind of like trigger us, or things that should be, hey, maybe it's time to get some help kind of ideas?
It's important to, well, we have to see ourselves as two systems. So what you're talking about there is, we are either in survival or we're in thriving. And when we're in survival, we're going to have very specific personal ways of being there. So when you say that you are, your mind goes off on one and it starts, imagining things that aren't even really probably going to happen, that's a negativity bias that we all have inherent within our system. Now, a negativity bias with anxiety, with nervous system dysregulation, is going to feel scary. You're going to feel like there's a threat. You're not quite sure what it is, but there's a threat around you. Do you see what I mean? And
Yeah.
so we need to ask ourselves, is the fear that I am feeling, is there anything I can actually identify as the cause of that? Because if a car's barreling towards you, at 90 miles an hour, you should have anxiety. It's perfectly reasonable in that situation. But if you're sitting at your kitchen table and everything is actually okay, where's that fear coming from? That's your nervous system. That's not a thing. You can do something to dysregulate that. If you're re-regulate that. If your mind is going off in different tangents with this could happen, this could happen, this could happen, that's a survival mechanism. Your brain wants to prepare you for anything it might encounter. But when your nervous system's dysregulated, it's going to push your mind into really, really like, what is everything that could go wrong here? We must look at it all to be safe, when you're actually already safe, you know? So it's when you're getting to that point where you're like, there's actually no physical identifiable reason here for me to be feeling like this. I could probably do with some help. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense, you know. And for my situation, is just that, like you said, it kind of just invents a scenario, the different narratives, and like I'm just sitting there, and then all of a sudden my brain will start kicking up and start thinking of, oh, this and that, and all these weird scenarios of things, basically like you were saying, preparing me for
Mm-hmm.
it. And it's like she said, guys, with like if you should panic if a car is coming at you, but for me it's like that all the time though.
Yeah.
And what doesn't help is that I have depression as well, and sometimes one person I was talking to, he said that it feeds into the other. Now, is that completely true like that, Liz, or how does it work a different way?
How do you mean?
He basically told me that my anxiety fed into my depression.
It can, if we see it as wrong, you know, everything. And it's a really good point, that, because we tend to judge ourselves quite harshly, especially when we have anything like anxiety, like depression, you know, like, and this, I work with a lot of people who they're like, I am so lazy that I just, you know, and then I judge myself and I'm horrible to myself because the dishes pile up and I can't do the cleaning. That's a nervous system in freeze. You know, that's because you have ran the anxiety for so long that the nervous system eventually goes, I can't do this now. I'm just going to shut down to keep myself safe. We don't want to judge ourselves there. We want to bring compassion to that and understand and be like, this is a period of time where I feel like I need rest, deep rest, and then give ourselves that without the judgment of what's not getting done. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense when and it's just crazy. It really is. The fact that one can lead into the other.
Mm.
And different stuff like that, and all that kind of stuff like that, and things like that. Definitely. And as you in your questionnaire says, it is good to talk about your emotional health, guys.
Absolutely.
A
Yeah.
lot of people say they want one thing. This came up from another conversation I was having with somebody. We were talking about something, and they were like, how a lot of people say, oh, well, I want this kind of person, and then you get that person, and you're like, never mind, I didn't really want that. And that it's like, okay. The only problem I think with today's society is a lot of things that the movies ruin stuff for people. They're like, they think that you know, it's things are not what they're supposed to be. Oh, well, it's like they're gonna sit there on the couch and ask me a bunch of rant. No, that's not how this works, guys. That's not what therapy is. It's not.
No.
Or they go, oh, they're gonna check me into a crazy house. Listen, you don't know crazy until you've seen crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
literally.
No, having anxiety isn't. I mean, we're in a society where we're bombarded with so much information, you know, and then there's a dopamine issue. You know, we log in the hope of seeing a notification that gives us a dopamine hit, but we can do that far too often. You know, we can exhaust that system with it. I think there's a really good book, Dopamine Nation, that speaks to that. That there's an effect of that. There's an influence from that on your entire system,
Yeah.
you know, and we have to be aware of what's influencing us. It's like, you know, I have a 22-year-old son who he played video games his entire childhood, but was really healthy with it as well, you know. And they say, oh, video games ruin it. No, because he had a healthy approach to it.
Yeah.
Often not social media or video games that are the issue, it's our approach to it. It's our self-control with it, and we need self-awareness for that.
Yeah, and like you're saying, self control. Like I see people that are like, just staring at their phone all day, and I do that sometimes too because I have ADHD, so I kind of hyper focus on some things sometimes. But TikTok is my poison. Like
Right.
I get on there and just love watching those videos of just the craziest things people do, and then
Yeah.
you're just sitting there going, "Is this really happening?" And some of it's real, and some of these are just skits people have made up for entertainment, and
Yeah.
it just gets wild. And then those stupid challenges that go around
Yeah.
like, oh, let's do the hot water challenge. Hey, let's not try and do these things, guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it makes you wonder. It's like, well, how easily can you influence somebody? Well, let's find out. Let's come up with some weird challenge and see what happens. Well, here we go. Let's dump a bucket of ice on my head.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like,
Precisely. Absolutely. 100%.
And I
And
don't know what it's, and I'm sorry not to catch up. I don't know what it's like over there in Scotland, but I know here in the States, it's like a lot of these guys are just like, oh, well, I'm going to do it because my friends are doing it. Like, yeah, that's just if everybody goes jumps off a bridge, we don't go do that, guys. That's not how this works.
yeah, yeah, that we have that very same saying over here. Absolutely.
Right.
But no, exactly. We need to really develop the ability to tune into ourselves and ask, uh, what do I need here? We're far too busy telling ourselves what we should be, what we should actually be communicating to ourselves. What do I need here? Do I need someone to talk to? Do I need some rest? Do I need to get off this phone? Do I need to go outside? Do I need to eat well? What do I need here? And then identify that. That would
Is it-
be one of the greatest questions, but it's quite boring, so people didn't want to to look at it.
No, and I was going to ask you when you said that, how is there like, do you have any tips for people to identify things like that? So maybe like, maybe, give them some little help of like, hey, maybe you need to kind of lessen the amount of it. Like you said, your son had a healthy relationship with video games and things like that. Maybe, give them some examples of like what are unhealthy ones.
I think if you feel like you have an overwhelming need to, be on, say, let's go with computer games. If you felt an
Mm-hmm.
overwhelming need and it was impacting other healthy practices in your life, then that probably needs a wee bit of, being looked at. We want to be taking care of ourselves in a day, hygiene, but also emotional hygiene, mental hygiene. So that looks like developing the ability to tune into your body and go, am I tense somewhere? Am I holding my body in a strange, angle just because I've not really noticed? How am I feeling? What emotion is in my belly? Have I got any sensations of hotness, or we all know what anxiety feels like in the body. We actually want to identify that when it's happening and then try and understand why it's there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
It's really tuning in, and then we all have an inner critic which gets louder and louder and louder
Mm-hmm.
when we have anxiety or when anything seems wrong, and we want to be able to listen to that, because this is part of the issue with the positivity movement. We can't just push away that negative stuff because it's there for a purpose. That negative stuff is coming up because your nervous system is trying to get you to look at what could potentially be wrong and potentially be a threat to you.
Yeah.
So when your inner critic is giving you that, oh, you've done this wrong, that was terrible, we have to learn to come back to that and go, so what? What does that mean? And when it comes back with everyone's going to hate you because you're useless, is that true? That's not true. You yourself will know that your brain might tell you that, and you can be like, my wife's not going to hate me though. We have to learn to identify what's going on within us and then take influence to, influence ourselves. Talk back to the inner critic, develop our inner coach. Because we have a negativity bias, we are not naturally pushed towards being positive. We actually have to create that. We have to do that consciously and mindfully, because it's natural to us to be negative because that keeps us alive. We actively have to do
there you
the other
Okay, so
side.
we lost you at, look at your inner critic is where we lost you at.
Oh, sorry. Did I cut off?
No, you're good.
Yeah.
No, I think we just lost a little bit of muffled connection, but you're good.
Fat. So yeah, we need to learn how to address that. We need to. It's like having a little friend walking beside you all the time. They're just spouting this negativity. We need to sit down with them and go, why is that a problem? What can we do about that? You know what I mean? And actually address that from a wholeness point of view rather than trying to be positive. Because we have the negativity bias, we naturally have that but we need to consciously and deliberately create the other side of that, where we actually talk to ourselves quite supportively, where we can support what we're doing. And I don't believe in being positive towards ourselves. I believe in supportive thinking more than anything, which is, maybe I haven't done enough today. Maybe I haven't, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Which sounds much better than denial or
Right.
trying to justify, because that then becomes a conflict within our mind. Whereas if we can be like, yeah, I didn't get anything done today, and that's okay, some days look like that. That's being supportive towards yourself. That's much more effective against an inner critic than positivity is.
Yeah, yeah. And I have a friend. I don't think he listens too well. He likes to like wonder why his wife gets so upset with him. I'm like, hey, what have you done today to help her out? He goes, probably nothing. And I'm like, then don't you think maybe that's why she gets upset, man? And it's like, he's just like, yeah, maybe. I'm like, not maybe, dude. That is the reason she's getting on your case all the time. It's like, you don't do enough. Yeah, I probably don't. And he laughs about it. And I'm like, it's not funny, dude. Like, you have to
No,
take these things serious. Like, you take
yeah,
things for granted in life nowadays, and you push away the people that are trying to support you and be there for you. It it could just be you're gonna feel alone then because you're pushing everyone away because you're not letting anyone in to help you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's, he needs to develop self-awareness to the point that he also has relational awareness, where he's aware of the impact that he's having in a relationship.
Yeah,
It really matters that we're aware of the impact that we have on ourselves. And then in relationships, what is the impact of how I'm being impacting on, on you, on the other people? And that's how we become a safe space for other people. When we are self aware enough to know that if we're being ignorant or if we're being a wee bit angry about something, that could be having a real impact on someone else who's maybe had the experience of their whole life, their whole family's been angry. So now when we do that, they feel really, left out and they feel really uncared for. And yet we're just expressing anger, So it matters that we know that other people have exactly their own experience that wasn't like ours. It might have been similar, it might have been nothing even remotely similar. Everyone is a walking experience, and we have an influence on that. What influence do we want that to be?
exactly. And I think some of the influences online, a lot of these social media creators, uh, I think a lot of them don't realize how much effect they have on people, especially the younger generation, because, like they idolize them and they're like, well, I want to be like them, not realizing that 90% of that stuff is just they're doing it just for clicks. Like
Yeah,
that's how they get paid. That's how they make their money is because they get you to watch their videos. They're not thinking the outcome is like, oh, well, these kids may actually believe what I'm saying is real. So you have those people who are like, oh, this is how you should treat women. And it's no, it's
yeah,
not.
precisely.
And
We also have a responsibility to be aware of how we're being influenced as well. We have to take control of that and be like, well, do I want to take that on? We can observe anything without adopting it. We have to be mindful though. I know that you get those people online and they're very much like, this is how you treat women and I am that, and it's like, well, I can choose to completely ignore that, or I can choose to consider that as something that I adopt. And we have to be really aware of that, aware of our power to do that.
yeah, that too. And uh, cycling back to the video game thing, there's an incident that I do think of now that a friend of ours had. Her son was online, and parents, like, I'm a dad of three girls. I could tell you right now, you need to be very careful about what they're getting into these days because there's a lot of weirdos out there asking
Yeah,
them questions about their information. Well, this young gentleman that was online, he was playing. I'm not sure what he was doing exactly. He's doing those online games that kids play nowadays, and we as parents may think it looks kind of like dumb. Okay, it's just whatever. But these kids are so hyper focused playing it, we don't realize who they're interacting. This guy was asking questions about where he lived, and he was giving out his information to people. And I looked at his mom and go, yeah, you might want to get over there because your son's over there handing out your information to everybody and some random person on the internet. And it's just crazy.
yeah, 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 absolutely.
It's like what is it? Recently, I saw on TikTok. It was a news video report about a 15-year-old kid that got killed because he was trash talking a 37-year-old man. It's like, really, is this really what the world is coming to? That we go online and we act like complete fools, and then we don't realize that the consequences and actions have things that'll happen. Like, I'm sorry, like I mean, cause and effect, basically. Like you talking
Yeah,
crazy amount of things to somebody, being negative and spewing out things, not
yeah,
realizing that the accessibility to figure out where you're at is a lot easier than most people realize. And
yeah,
for us to have to see this news article, and then the news report about, oh yeah, the 37-year-old man killed a 15-year-old kid for talking trash to him online. It's like, wow, yeah, that's not good.
No, 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 absolutely. Yeah.
And I saw that, and I'm just thinking, I'm having flashbacks to my childhood, because like a lot of guys, like a lot of people like to say, I'm trying to think how we do it. It's like, we make a reference a lot of times, Liz, we call it the Call of Duty lobbies. Okay. And when we say that, think of the most toxic environment you could ever be in. Like, I'm being serious. I may be laughing a little bit, but it's horrible. Like,
Yeah.
we were horrible
Call
to
of
each
Duty that
other.
my son played. Yeah, that's what he used to play.
Yeah. Okay. So, you just got to think of it this way. Okay. You're in the most toxic space ever. You get into these groups, they put us in these lobbies together, max it out to say 16 players in a lobby. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
there's a part where before the session starts, they split you into teams unless, you're with some of your own friends, and then they'll kind of group you up a certain case. So you can trash talk each other in there. And we would say the craziest things to each other.
Yeah.
Now, was it okay? Probably not, and probably wasn't ever okay to say any of these things. But a lot of people make that reference, like, yeah, you never would have made it through a Call of Duty lobby back in the day. Like, it's like a badge of honor when it shouldn't be. It's actually kind of pathetic that we decide to talk to each other like that and say things like that. Because look at where we're at now. With that scenario right there, that 37-year-old man went and found that 15-year-old kid and ended up shooting him because he was talking trash to him online over a video game.
Totally. Yeah.
And it's just crazy. It really is. It's just like, is that going to be the first of many? It possibly could be, because like, there used to be a guy on YouTube that's all he would do is go on there and just sit there and basically troll people all day and like get them upset and say the craziest things you can think of to people. And that was the thing back in the day for us. That was our entertainment. It was YouTube and all that other stuff, and a lot of the TV shows that aren't censored. And I know it's different here versus a lot of other places don't have really that much sensitivity. Like, I know Japan's like anime, for example, stuff over there, they get away with different things, but they're not just doing like gratuitous violence of just constant just bodies flying. A lot of it is like they kind of self-censor themselves a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's a cartoon, so you obviously can get a little farther into fantasy versus the reality of like a lot of the movies you see from the 90s. Like Saving Private Ryan was the big one at the time, where it's just completely the craziest thing you've ever seen and stuff like that. And then you take it to, like, say you're going to see like Saw, or what was it, a Hostel was the big one at the time when I was younger, where you had the whole scene where the guy was doing the cutting the eyeball kind of thing. The craziest things you see. And it's like, we think this is okay, but really at the same time, we're desensitizing people to the fact that this stuff may actually happen. For all we know, we don't know. But
Yeah.
like, the reality is, it's just insane. Like, how much more violent can you get? And then it goes to like a lot of these films that are so bad that they're banned in several countries, and they're banned for a reason, guys. They're not just banning them because they want to. Because if you watch them, it's complete nonsense you're watching. It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah. And we have to be aware that those are extremes.
Mm-hmm.
Most of it, just like exactly what you were saying about TikTok, all the mad crazies. Some of them are extreme, and we have to have self-modulation there, where you're like, yeah, it's funny to look at, but I'll never be doing it. I'll
Exactly.
never taking that. Yeah, I know what you mean. Definitely. But yeah, I mean, he used to be in the Call of Duty lobbies. He just found it funny, but I think people found him funny because he had a Scottish accent. I think really.
A lot of times I liked interacting with people from like England and everywhere there, because it was great, because how the language is a little bit different, the different things that get said, kind of stuff like that. It was just funny to listen to one of them just get upset and he starts like yelling things at people, and you're asking him like, what is that? What are you saying, man? That's just crazy.
Yeah, you need a translator.
You know what I say?
Definitely.
So, but and it's just crazy. Like these things that we all see every day. And me and another person got into a conversation about, what are we teaching our youth these days by the way, the things that we do. Like, had my kids heard the things I said, they would have looked at me nowadays and gone, Dad, what is wrong with you? You should have never said those things. And I teach my kids, and I've always told them the same thing, is a powerful message, is that, remember the last thing you say to someone, because if they're not here tomorrow, you can't take those words back.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's the craziest part of all, when you start bullying people online and things like that. You think it's all fun and games, but is it really though? I mean,
Yeah.
you don't understand, like, we don't understand what people go through every day. Some people use it as an escape, and, we're not sure what they deal with every day. So, like, you giving them a hard time and saying crazy stuff to them and things like that, you don't know how that affects people.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's
In the somatic stuff, we call it having a trauma backpack. It's like an invisible backpack that's full of all the experiences that have weighed you down over the years. And some people are still carrying that, to a big degree. And that's why we have to go into schools now and go into workplaces and actually explain trauma to people. It's still weighing some people down, and that's exactly what you're saying there. You don't know when you're saying something, it might be a throwaway comment, but you don't know what they're already carrying. And we want to be aware of that across the board everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I don't think people, a lot of people don't take it serious either. And it could just be, like the idea of your product or your environment. Your parent doesn't believe it, so you don't believe it. And then you kind of, it's almost like you're brainwashing your children to think the way you want them to think versus letting them think for themselves.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, we are subject to influence from the day we were born. We accept that we have different accents and we know exactly where we got those accents from, but our mindsets are very much the same. Our emotional capacity is very much the same. It's all we mimic, we learn through mimicking when we're really wee. So if your parents have a dysfunctional mindset, you've probably learned to accept that as being reality. Just because it's the one that they lived in. If you believe that to feel sadness is the most horrible thing you can do because your parents taught you that, you will grow up cutting off the sadness in your system. But if you cut off the sadness, you cut off the happiness as well. So we have to realize that we're not actually wrong, but we've had these influences all throughout our lives, to the same degree that your accent sounds exactly the same like your caregivers.
Right. Right. And, we did get into that part too, because, she did mention the same thing. She was saying, like, because she's spiritual. So her ideas were kind of more like that. So, but she was saying the same thing basically you are too, is that they mimic a lot of the things they see. Like younger kids will see you, how you interact with, like, say, go to like a restaurant and you deal with somebody like that. They see you doing these things and they think, okay, well, I should go do that too when I get older. Hey, mom was treating this other guy like trash, so I should go do the same thing because they're beneath me. And no one's beneath anybody, guys. Like, we're all equal. We're all people. We're all human. It don't matter what color you are. We're all the same thing. We're all flesh and blood, man. It's like, and that's the problem these days, is that, it's like
expectations as well.
Exactly.
If you watch your parents argue day in, day out, you think that's what a relationship looks like. If you watch your parents go to work and work really hard and burn themselves out, you'll create that as an expectation. That's what I'm supposed to do. It really matters that we become aware of these influences so we can go, does that work for me?
Exactly.
We're not all built the same. We're not all designed to do the same thing.
Yeah, and I get that too, and like you said, my parents argued all the time in front of me, and I thought that's the way things should go. And I'll admit, my relationship with my children's mom, we argued all the time. I thought that was normal because my parents would do it all the time.
Exactly. Yeah.
They get in huge shouting matches and all that too.
Yeah, it wasn't that you were being wrong or bad in any way. You were just behaving the way you had seen. That's exactly it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And, it was, we'd argue all the time about this, and it'd be the stupidest thing too, guys. It just random things that just set me off, and we'd just go at it about things, and then we'd invent new things to argue about. And then eventually it led to, stuff getting broken because one of us just started getting mad and things get thrown and it just got crazy. It was just like, and I admit at that time I should have probably looked at getting some help, and I was still in denial at the time, and it's not completely her fault.
Identified that, that's a dysfunction. We don't know that because it's been so normalized for us.
Yeah.
It's been so normalized that we're like, but this is how everyone does it.
Yeah, exactly.
Why would that be so it takes that wee bit of self-awareness where you go, wait a minute, I could probably do this differently and it might feel better. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, listen, my journey too. It took all up until about maybe. Well, I'm 40 now. Okay, so last year, I got married actually in April. Okay, so it took
Congratulations.
up until that point. Thank you. For me to realize I need to get some help because my wife now and she understands and she makes me want to be a better person. So like I started having these problems, like like these things I started noticing and I was like, I just said, forget it. It's just time. I need to do something about this problem before I lose somebody that actually cares and actually wants me to do better. Because ever since me and her have been together, I have diabetes, I have high blood pressure. All these things were in bad shape. I knew when we started to talk, and she could tell little by little that something wasn't right.
Yeah.
And my kids were living with me too, so I basically had to put on a mask and show that like nothing was wrong because I didn't want them to worry about me
Yeah.
and things like that. So they were staying with me. So then eventually they went to go stay with their mom, which was a decision based completely on my health because I didn't want them to worry again. So I didn't really tell them much about it at first until I was ready to really just kind of lay it all out there for me because they're 12 and 16, but they don't act like 12s and 16. They act like older adults because they've had to, because between me and their mom, I'd work nights and all these other things. They'd have to, kind of like the older sister would have to look out for the younger ones sometimes, and
Yeah.
and it wasn't fair to her. And I'll be honest, it wasn't fair to her that she had to play the parent role most of the time, and I take my part and blame now. I should have then, but I mean, at least I can admit that I'm wrong now. I mean, yes, I should have done it sooner, but I mean, it's never too late to do something about it.
The point is that you identified that and you went, I want to do it differently.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most important bit there. And that's a strength within you. You have to give yourself kudos for that, because the hardest thing there is to, and never make yourself wrong. But that wasn't ideal. It wasn't ideal how you were.
Again, this.
But you can update that at any point, and just like, I would like to do the ideal version now. Thank you.
Are you back? I think we lost you at the hardest thing, Liz.
Oh, I can't. I don't know why it's cut.
You cut out on us. It just could just be the internet. It could just be the connection. It happens from time to time. You were saying it's the hardest thing, and then that's where we lost you.
Yeah, it's the hardest thing to look within and say, right, I've identified that that's not how I want to do it. I want to do it differently now. It's the hardest thing to say that we want change without making ourselves wrong. We want to update that. We want to be at a place where we're like, I've just identified that was imperfect, and now I want to do it better. That's all. We don't have to be wrong.
Yeah, and we being the same person are having a discussion, and she put it like the whole macho man exterior type thing, like a lot of people that are older have that. Oh well, you're always raised to be the man. You have to be strong. You can't be vulnerable to your emotions, and you don't need help. You just need to toughen up. That's the problem.
Yeah,
but it's really not.
Mental health is awful. It's absolutely awful. 100%.
Yes. Yes, I had a podcast prior to this called Pete's Corner Store, Liz. We did an episode of men's mental health. The statistics alone are what scared me into like, I need to do something now before something becomes a problem and stuff like that. And it was just crazy because, statistically, I'm in that high age range of that whole thing. And it was just like, whoa, it was a culture shock to me. It's like, yeah, I need to do something for this problem becomes a real big issue.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've actually had more men come for therapy this year than ever before. And after that,
and that's great too. It really is, because a lot of guys have to live that macho persona and things like that. And they feel like, if you're too emotional, women will find that as, oh, well, you're just weak. That's what the problem is. You're just weak. Because my wife kind of has that mentality, but it's the way she was kind of raised a little bit, because me and her have like honest conversations about stuff like that. And she told me that, and I was like, okay, I respect that's the way you look at it, but that's not how things work nowadays.
No, exactly.
And she's really cool when we had this conversation. That's a great thing about her too, is that, when you find that one person you can have real conversations with, it's not like you guys are taking jabs at each other. You're having an honest conversation with somebody because they obviously grew up differently than you do. And everybody grows up differently, obviously. And like her past, wow. The things she's told me, wow. Like I'm just like, it's horrible. It's horrible. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just like, I wouldn't even tell anybody on here. She's actually considered coming on and doing a couple episodes and talking about some of that stuff. And I'm just like, it's really up to you. That's the whole point of this thing, is it's just safe space and stuff like that. And then, my only real message for this whole thing is that you guys aren't alone. Like, you guys can hit me up, ever you want. I've even got some Facebook groups I started now for my podcast now. That the number one rule is, if you come in there, negativity will not be allowed.
Yeah.
Because we can't have that. Like, we need to have a space where people that have, other issues, can come in and support each other. Maybe you just need to get amped up, come in there and just talk to some people and, help them lift your spirits, and or you need somebody to vent to. That's the whole point. That's the great thing about it, is just, come on in, just drop it down, and a lot of us will pump you up, and we'll make, we'll let you know that you're not alone. Like, we all deal with crazy things every day. We have stress, work.
So you're allowing negativity there, in that people can come and rant, but what you won't tolerate is directed negativity toward.
Exactly. But yeah, because I want to make sure it's a safe space for them. They can come in and, if they need a trauma dump or something and just want somebody to listen, you can do that. That's a great thing about it. But the direct, like, coming in and attacking people, we're not going to do that. That's not allowed.
Precisely.
Like, that's the number one rule in there. It's just, it's not allowed.
Because
like, we can't continue.
Yeah, that's a part of the issue with mental health, is that everyone thinks they're not supposed to be negative. But how can that be possible when there's so many negative things in the world? What if we looked at it from the point of view that the negativity that's within you, you don't want to be run by it, but it's part of wholeness. Wholeness invites the whole thing. And what if you could cope beautifully with the negativity that was in you, rather than suffering from it? We can only do that if we allow it to be present.
Right. And that's like I said, that's a great thing about it. I just, I also I'm going to do also like a Discord thing for those other ones that like that one better kind of thing. And the same thing, it's going to be like, we can amp each other up. We can help each other feel better. Have a rough day and you just want to come hang out with some people, come hang out with us, because everybody deals with something.
Exactly.
I listen to a lot of podcasts. I don't know if you've ever heard the Bunny one, the one that Joe Roll's wife did, the country singer guy, his wife. She deals with a lot of things. It's crazy. A lot of people just look at her and probably go, "Oh no, she's fine. She's a celebrity. She shouldn't do." No, she deals with a lot of crazy things, and she says that her Discord is a lot of times a great escape. She likes to go in there and talk to everybody and uplift their spirits and things like that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's a great thing. It's just a way to connect with other people from other places and things like that. And you never know, you can make a new friend. Like, hey, okay, like, I got a friend that's in California I've known for maybe 10 years now. We started playing games together, and everybody's like, "Oh, that's just your internet friend." No, he's come visited me. We've gone to see concerts together and things like that, and all that kind of stuff too. So, I mean, it's great. That's a great thing with the internet, but the internet also has that negativity of just your ability to have crazier people to start attacking you and saying the wildest things possible for no reason, just because they get their jollies off doing that.
Totally. Usually we're wired for connection, and people that are quite attacky, that's their attempt at connection. It's just a really dysfunctional one.
Right.
But that's what they're looking for. They just don't know that.
Or they're looking for a reaction too, Liz. You know what I mean? They kind of want you to react.
Them is a connection. So aye. It's just it's the emotionally unintelligent way of doing it.
yes, that's exactly right.
I can't understand why people fear trolls, because that's really all it is. They are trying. Every time someone communicates, it's an attempt at connection. They just might not be good at it.
And I get that. And then Bunny's husband, Jelly Roll, he was posting about how he was trying to get himself in better health. Mm-hmm. And like, he's not, it's funny because they're polar opposites, basically. He doesn't have tough skin. So like, a lot of people are making comments about his weight and how he just looked horrible and things like that. And a lot of these trolls were getting on there saying horrible things about him, that he stepped away from the internet. He was like, yeah, I want nothing to do with this. And then she went on a campaign to point out the fact that it's ridiculous that he should feel that way for trying to post how good he felt about, hey, I lost, 20 pounds today. Like instead of someone like pumping them up, it's like, oh, well, you still look heavy, you still look like this, and it's like, why? Why do you need to do
Yeah.
that? And that's the whole point of a troll, though.
Yeah.
And my poor wife Liz had went online. You know, mind you, this woman has never been online, never done any interactions on the internet, like video game wise. And for whatever reason, just because you're female, I'm going to tell you right now, a lot of people come right at you. And I told her that. I said, listen, you have to understand the following things. You're a female, they're going to come after you. Luckily, they didn't use the whole, oh, get back in the kitchen, make me a sandwich type things. None of that. They were calling her nasty names and things like this. And I'm like, you just have to understand that there's the ability to mute people and just not listen to them. Like, there's just people out there that just have their good jollies just screaming at people. So that's why a lot of these video game companies have been stepping in and saying, well, guess what? Now we're going to start listening into everything you're saying because this is getting to a point of just
Yeah.
insanity, which it should have been earlier,
Oh God,
honestly,
yeah.
because of the Call of Duty lobbies, because we would all have been banned a long time
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah. Or brought into line. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I have a bad habit myself of just like giving people a hard time and stuff like that. And and that was the other thing I started noticing is the issues because my wife doesn't like it when I start trash talking people online. And it's a real bad habit I'm working on. I really am. I'll be the first one to tell you. I know it's a
Mm-hmm.
problem, but I don't get like nasty. I kind of just like I say certain things, and she's like, "Yeah, they were saying these things that you say." I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, that was a reality check right there to the gut." It was like, "Yeah, I need to stop doing this stuff."
Yeah.
And I get it's not okay, and I'm trying. And a lot of my rage is it's what it comes from. I get so upset because I'm so hyper focused on it. Get so competitive. You're like, oh, get like mad and stuff like that.
But you've got the self-awareness, so
Yeah, I do now,
yeah.
and it's thanks to her. She doesn't understand it, but she sometimes she doesn't realize how much help she's really doing for me with that and stuff like that. She just thinks, she doesn't realize that these things she points out to me, I do get upset about them. I do get a little mad because she's getting on my case about it, but it's because she's doing it out of love. She's not doing it out of spite of just trying to cut me down and say, hey, you need to knock this off. This is not okay to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
So, but it gets kind of crazy, and I'd be the first to admit, now that I have the self awareness, I start looking back on things and realizing the things I've
Mm-hmm.
done. Like I with my ex, I had drank a lot,
Right. Yeah.
and oh God, Liz, I couldn't even tell you the things I've lost friends over saying to them because I get online and be so negative to them,
Yeah.
and I didn't see it because I was so blinded by the fact that I was just so incoherent because that's how bad I was drinking. Like I get online and just verbally abuse these people who've always just been nice to me and did nothing wrong, and I just lashed out at them
Yeah.
for no reason because I had a rough day, and then me and my ex were arguing, and stuff like that. And then she'd get on my case about the simplest things, like you said, like not getting stuff done around the house, and then my gaming habit was so bad that I wasn't doing anything I was supposed to be doing. Like I was supposed to take care of some things, so now I do it based on like if I haven't taken care of certain things, that I'm not allowed to touch it at all.
Right. Yeah.
And it's hard. It's hard. Like I was addicted bad. Like I ended up selling my system at the time because it was that bad, and I had to part ways with it. And she didn't understand that. I was trying to regulate it because I was like on it 24/7. I wake up, I get on, I wake up, kind of like these Twitch streamers and stuff you see all the time on there. And that's the thing too. I think a lot of those guys just need to be honest with people
Yeah. Yeah.
of how many hours they spend on that because I think it's a false reality to people that, hey, I can do this too.
Totally. Yeah. Absolutely.
It's like back in the 90s, skateboarding was huge and things like that. And like, oh, I want to go pro.
Yeah.
Yeah, but look at how many percentage of people actually went pro and do something with it.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if you remember Bam Margera, the one guy that was like big on MTV and stuff. He was a skateboarder and
Yes.
stuff like that. Like people go like guys, if you haven't heard him, go listen to what he was saying on Bunny's podcast because he did an episode where he went down all the roads of everything else, and it was
Mm-hmm.
crazy. Like he has some of the wildest stories ever, things he was doing and stuff like that. And he'll be the first one to tell you that not everybody makes it big skating and all that other kind of stuff. The same thing with these Twitch streamer guys. It's like they spend a lot of time on those things in front of the screens and everything else. And there's a gentleman by the name of King Scratch I watch all the
Mm-hmm.
time, and he's the first one to tell you that like when you're involved in the internet really deep like that, like they attack him on a daily basis. Like the mental attack he gets on a daily basis is insanity.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's all because people are jealous because he's making it big, and he's like, they don't realize how much work he's putting into it. They just think he's just making all this money doing nothing, when literally it's a job. Like, you have to edit these videos, you have to do this, you have to do that, you know what I mean? And it's crazy.
Absolutely.
It's insane. It really is. Like, people don't seem to understand how hard a lot of these things are. And it's like, it's great, you want to get paid to play video games, but do you really have the time and the energy to spend, and the hours? And like, it's not an overnight thing. It takes a while before it happens.
Absolutely, yeah. But with regards to people, nobody doing better than you will ever criticize you.
True.
It's just not a thing. They didn't have the time for it. So, if people are spending their time trolling and criticizing, they're not putting any time into their own success. So they're a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. And a lot of people, what does it say when you play online? They're like, go get a job.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I have a job, so what do you mean that's how I afford to play this game? So what do you mean exactly?
Yeah. Just the stereotype is someone that's just sitting on their backside constantly. Yeah.
God, it's horrible. It really is. All right, well, I think it's time we start wrapping this up a bit. Liz, is there anything you want to tell the people, just where they can find you? Did you televisit type things, or I know you have an Instagram listed on there. Do you like post like different inspirational things, stuff like that on there?
Yes, I do. I wouldn't say it's inspirational, but I'm not.
Liz is like, here comes the real side, everybody.
Yes, that's pretty much it, definitely. Because I think it's vastly underestimated. Where everyone's trying to be inspirational. I want to tell you the stuff that will actually make a difference. I'm not going to tell you to think positive. I'll tell you to take time to sit with yourself and breathe to regulate your nervous system. I'll tell you to set boundaries with yourself. Just like what you've said you've done, you don't let yourself touch it until you've got stuff done. That's an excellent boundary, as long as you're not being too harsh with it. But yes, my message to everyone is you're not actually broken, ever. You've only been influenced to behave in certain ways, and you can change anything that you like. You're not stuck with anything.
Okay. And you want to plug your Instagram for everybody in case they want to come and follow you and see some of the things you say on there?
My Instagram is Liz My Therapist.
Awesome. Well, guys, we're getting ready to wrap up another exciting episode of Pete vs. Anxiety here. As always, you guys can follow me at Pete vs. Anxiety Podcast on the TikTok. I'm also on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon, and everywhere else you get your podcasts at. If you want to join my Facebook group, there is one on there now. I have it started and everything like that. It's Pete vs. Anxiety. Just look it up. Like I said, there's going to be rules and things like that. I'll probably invite people like Liz and other people I've had on there just to come in there and just drop in their little tidbits of knowledge to people, just and and basically the idea is going to be, it's going to be a safe space. You can come in and get it, some advice if needed, things like that. If you want to talk to people that have similar issues you're having and stuff like that. I'm also on Instagram, guys. If you want, it's Pete _versus Anxiety on there as well, and things like that. As always, just remember that it costs nothing to be kind to people, guys. Like, use just one positive message to somebody could make their day every day. And also, just stay tuned, guys. Also, I do have a weekly radio station show I'm going to be doing soon. I don't have all the details yet. I apologize. I'm still waiting on all the information. Liz, I was going to ask, maybe sometime, you'll come by and check it out. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, guys, this is going to wrap up another exciting episode of Pete vs. Anxiety. Everybody, Liz, thank you so much for joining me. It was great to meeting you. And like I said, I have your email and everything. I'll definitely keep in touch. It was great having a conversation with you. Until next time, guys, as always, like I said, it costs nothing to be kind to people. It really doesn't. One positive message can make a big difference. Until next time, guys, y'all have a great one. Liz, say bye to everybody.
Bye.